And if this is the time, and I'm very, very glad that you managed to join us, completely, Dr. Emily Landau of the INSS with us in studio on this, what seems to be a fateful morning. I'm sure that you specifically and the INSS are looking closely at Vienna. The sticking blocks that seem to remain are the arms embargo, but some reports, again, we do not know, of UN inspectors coming in. All of that does not add up to what is needed for a good deal, I'm sure you will say. Why?
For the same reasons, actually, that we've been discussing all along. The problems are the same problems. It's so ironic that now the sticking point is the arms embargo. Iran,
why is it ironic?
Because Iran brought that on the table and put that on the agenda at the 11th hour before the July 10th deadline, because they knew that deadline was important to the United States because of congressional review. They suddenly put that on the table, and of course it became a sticking point. Why should there be a lifting of the arms embargo with all of what that means as far as ballistic missiles are concerned? But the Iranians, you know, it all comes back to the negotiations dynamic. And when you create a dynamic where Iran has room to do what it's doing, which is to try to squeeze the P5+1 at their weak points, then you will see the Iran squeeze the P5+1 at their weak points. And that's what's happening. So now suddenly the arms embargo is the sticking point. But of course, the other issues are still on the table. You know, I've read this morning there's some information coming out with regard to inspections and this idea of the managed access. So, and one of the problematic aspects that I've been talking about incessantly is this idea that there will be a committee to decide about Iran's violations, but Iran will be a member of the committee. That's a bad idea. Why? Because that means that you are opening the field for endless discussions, because you will present the violations. And let's say in the best case scenario, where the P5+1 or whoever's going to decide about those violations agrees that it's a significant violation, something needs to be done, they bring it to the table, and then they have to present it to the Iranians, and the Iranians will want time to consider it. And the Iranians might come back with their answer that they want the group to consider. And this can, I mean, we know how Iran operates. We have some experience with this. We know how they try to play for time and extend, you know, whatever process is going on, just like this negotiation has been going on since 2003. And therefore, you are undermining any ability to do effective verification, because they will be using that time to cover up whatever evidence was found and to make sure that when they finally allow, another thing on the agenda, I think I read that they will allow one visit to Parchin. Well, what do you think the Iranians have been doing since 2012 when the IAEA started trying to get access to Parchin? They're cleaning it up, they're covering it up, they're making sure that when the inspectors get there, they will likely find nothing. So they're allowing one visit to Parchin. I mean, these aspects of the verification regime, and that's just one issue where we see some information, these are not elements that can be considered a good deal.
Bits and pieces of information, and you know, and I tend to agree, but to play devil's advocate, because people who are saying in historic moments in negotiations, things need to be done in order to move forward. And then there's the danger that if there is no deal at this point, sanctions are not going to work as such to stop Iran from trying to reach the bomb, so to speak, and then they'll get to it much faster.
No, well, sanctions, their role has always been to create leverage for the negotiation. So even if the Americans walked away now, it's not the end of negotiations. It doesn't mean that this is over. It's part of the process. If the Americans said, okay, we're going, that would be something that would actually make the Iranians quite upset. They wouldn't know how to even relate to that, because they're so used to the Americans never leaving the table. That's what the Americans have taught them in this negotiation. It would really shake things up. Now, it wouldn't be the end of the negotiations and then to depend on sanctions to stop them. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But sanctions would remain. Iran would remain pressured. They would still have the same interest to come back to the table and get a deal. They would come back to the table, I assure you. But the leverage of the P5+1 would have gone up. It's a hard bargain here. It's not a negotiation where there's a shared interest and they're moving towards, something that's a win-win. It's not win-win. Either Iran will not be allowed to move to nuclear weapons, or it will. Iran wants to be able to. P5+1 want it not to be. It's a game of compellence. Only one side will come out winner. That's just the dynamic of this.
Dr. Landau of the INSS, I want to thank you profusely for being here this morning and shedding light on those specific points that we always need to hear. Thank you for being with us this morning.